Okay, here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, Brad Wolf is the managing partner of PeopleMax. His clients make more money with greater ease and satisfaction by maximizing the potential and performance of their people with a goal of 50 to 100% or more in profit increase within 12 months. He's the author of the best-selling book, People Problems: How to Create People Solutions for a Competitive Advantage. Ladies and gentlemen, Brad Wolf.
Any football fans out here?
Yep.
Imagine this for a moment. Your favorite football team is playing, and the quarterback and the center, right at the first possession they get, switch positions. And they stay in these positions for the rest of the game. How do you think that's going to work out for the team? Any basketball fans out here? Picture this. Your team, at the beginning of the game, has the center and the guard switch positions. And they stay that way the entire game. Who do you think is going to win?
Depends on if they practiced it or not. Could be a trick play.
So, but they stay that way the whole game. And then, any movie buffs out here? So, imagine this. The director of a serious romantic drama decides to cast either Will Ferrell or Jonah Hill as the romantic lead, and chooses to cast either Leonardo DiCaprio or George Clooney as the goofy guy that can't get the girl. So what do these three examples have in common? Well, number one, in each of these situations, the people are playing vastly out of position and are set up to fail. The second thing is, regardless of how much coaching, training and development, and everything else you provide, these people will not excel in roles they don't fit despite their best efforts. And the third thing they have in common is, in each of these situations, the coaches and the director would get fired for mismanagement of talent. So how does this relate to our workforce? When we look at our workforce, what percentage of the people are playing out of position in either moderately or to a great extent? So, anyone here heard of the Pareto principle or 80-20 rule? What that says is that with anything we do, roughly 80% of the value is going to be contained in only 20% of what you do. Now, when we look at our workforce, when I talk to business leaders, I almost always hear them say that 80% of the work is done by only 20% of the workers. Who here finds that is approximately true in their workforce? So what we're looking at is a real significant issue. Most companies refer to that 20% who do 80% of the work as their top performers or A players. And the reason that matters so much is that these top performers can typically produce 3 to 4 times greater productive output than the low to mid-range performers. So in terms of financial impact, let's say you had a department of 10 people and a payroll of $1 million. I'm going to take easy math for myself. And those 10 people were mid to poor performers. You can move and switch that department to only 3 top performers and get the same productive output and a higher engagement rate, saving $700,000 in payroll that would go directly to the bottom line. Let's look at this another way. That same 10 people that are mid to low range performers, if you switch those 10 people out with 10 top performers, that $1 million payroll, you're looking at 3 to 4 times more productivity. You're looking at $3 to $4 million greater profitability directly to the bottom line by making that switch. That's the impact that we're talking about. Now, I'm not talking about all of a sudden, next day, everyone is a top performer. That's not what we're talking about. But what if you can change 20% to 30% being top performers? If you can go to 30%, why can't you go from 30% to 40% being top performers? So this can take on a life of its own as you adopt this philosophy. Another thing of great importance is that people who are poor performers in one position could be top performers in another position that lines up better with their innate gifts and talents. So let me give you an example of a company that adopted that philosophy and put it into action. There's a building products manufacturer in the Pacific Northwest, and for the past 5 years they were running right around break even. They were making a little bit of money one year, losing a little bit the next. And they tried a number of different efforts to break out of this funk. Nothing worked. Out of desperation, they had heard about this concept of aligning their employees, and they gave that a try. And what they did was really simple. They looked at their salespeople, and they made sure and made some changes so that they only had salespeople who were innately wired for their particular product and customer base. And then they took their non-sales labor force, and they did the same thing. And they were able to go from 10 million to 13 million in sales and cut their expenses significantly, and were able to go from break even to $3.2 million of profit in only 2 years. Now, that sounds crazy, doesn't it? The thing is, when you consider what happens in sports and movies, why would you expect something different if you apply the same principles to the workforce? So what we're talking about is basically a process and a mindset shift that is very practical to create an organization that you have now and move it to becoming a top performing organization where you can radically improve profitability while increasing the personal satisfaction and ease with which you're working. So there's an important point here. As a manager, as leaders of the company, what really is your primary job? What is the most important thing you do? The most important thing you do, actually, the most important job of a manager is to maximize the return on investment of your employees. In fact, Peter Drucker, one of the most famous management consultants in history, has this quote: "The task of a manager is to make people's strengths effective and their weaknesses irrelevant." Let me say that one more time. The task of a manager is to make people's strengths effective and their weaknesses irrelevant. So when you think of yourself as a leader with your most important role, how are you doing? Would you like to do better? Even if you think you're doing a great job, would you like to do better? That's what I'm going to talk about with you here. So I'm going to stop on this.
That's good.
So what do you think you did well?
I had energy and passion in what I was saying. I knew what I was saying mattered. I think I used examples that were captivating and interesting to people that they can relate to, and then I tied that into the same principles apply in your workforce. Just why would you get different results in your workforce? Why would it be any different than that?
Okay.
I also used a quote that shifts their thinking. The idea is to shift their thinking from what they think their most important role is, and backed it up with someone who's one of the most respected management consultants in history, and then repeated it for emphasis, and then asked, "So how are you doing in your most important job? Would you like to do better?" And then I gave a story. It wasn't meant to be exciting. Well, it wasn't meant to be funny. It was meant to specifically illustrate impact and financial. And I gave some financial examples of the impact that this would have.
Okay. What do you think you can do better?
I'm not sure. That's why I want feedback. Maybe engaging more with questions, but I did ask questions. I'm not really sure.
So would you take that on the road as is?
The pressure's on.
Well, I mean,
Well, it depends on who I'm talking to. For the average audience, yeah, because what they're used to is pretty poor.
okay.
So,
So one of the.
I would get, in fact, I'm looking to do free speaking engagements. If anyone knows of business groups that are interested in that, I'm comfortable as it is now, giving it now.
Okay. The reason I ask is you have to become a good self-critic to be able to say, you know, I did a little of this, but I don't, you know, this didn't quite feel right. It didn't quite land right when I was looking at the audience, right? So, every time you speak, I would love for you to be able to come off the stage and say, you know, those two things, I really rocked that. That was awesome. But you know, if I could do one thing differently to that tomorrow, next time I do that, this is what I would do.
Well, and I'm not sure because I was making sure to talk to individuals, not just the group.
Okay.
I was moving around, maybe I can move around more. Maybe I can use my body better. So there's a lot of like lack of awareness of what, from lack of feedback on some of these things. But I think that this is my third time I've done this, so I think I've improved because of the feedback. But I'm a little at a loss at this point until I get feedback on some other things. There was nothing glaring to me. Now, if I kept going, I probably would have come up with some pretty glaring stuff.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So,
Should I sit or stand?
Stand,
Stand, okay.
stand, yeah.
Okay.
So here is a couple of things. So you asked a lot of questions for the audience. So if you're going to ask the question, you need to let the question sit. And I was never sure if you really wanted me to answer them or not. Do you agree? Right? So, like, if you ask it, look for people to nod or somebody give me an example.
Yeah, 'cause when I said that, you were looking right at me, and I just blurted it out, so I was in your world.
Right.
But then you didn't like the answer he gave. So, you have to be careful.
Well, it wasn't my answer.
Well, so let's talk about how to handle that, right? That's real world.
Yeah.
How did you feel with how he responded to your questions?
Dismissive.
Yeah. I felt the same way.
Yeah.
When you asked me, and I was actually trying to make a point because I wanted to see how you would handle this. It was like, okay, well, what do you think when they do that? Can they win? And I forgot what you said, and I was like, oh, well, it could totally be a trick play. Well, I said it was going to be for the whole game. I was like, oh, okay, right?
Good point.
So when you ask a question, you have to figure out, A, you need to let it sit and get an answer, or let me at least imagine it in my head. But if you ask a question to the audience and you didn't get the answer you want, you cannot dismiss the audience, because then I do not listen to you and I am not volunteering an answer again, because I don't want to be made to look stupid.
Right.
So,
Right.
that you have a path that you're going. This is improv, right?
Right.
So when he says it's to make more money, yeah, that is absolutely a role of a manager. But you know, there may be one that enables them to make more money or to be even more successful. What might that be? So you felt he's not wrong. He just didn't give you the answer you wanted. You're going to have to figure out a way to value him and to get back to your answer.
And if, let's say he's way off, because that's in order to make more money. So that's at the end, the outcome you want is to make more money. But how do you go about doing that is what I'm talking about. So I did dismiss you with that. And I could have said, you're absolutely right. And how do you maximize the amount of money you make with greater ease and personal satisfaction?
Well, I got to take more classes.
Well, you know what? I'm going to be providing a class, and we can talk afterwards about you signing up.
There you go. I like that.
That's a little better. It still feels like you're kind of condescending to me. So again,
So maybe I shouldn't ask the question, because
you have to determine. Now,
I want to engage him.
I'm not going to give you an answer for every single situation. The question is, you said there was a lot of yes/nos to the audience. So you were trying to engage us. You just need to be really thoughtful about that.
Lisa, can I say something real quick?
Absolutely.
Exactly along those lines. I would ask rhetorical questions, because when you were asking the
Yes.
questions, I wasn't sure if I was supposed to answer, and if I feel as though I'm supposed to answer, I answer. So if you're just asking a rhetorical question and I'm wrong, who gives a crap?
But that was a rhetorical question.
It sounded more like a question to us.
Direct
did.
question.
What is the most important?
You know what, yeah, no. I was thinking it's a rhetorical question because I didn't expect him to answer it, I expected him to think about it.
Well, then
So,
say,
but
think
that's,
about
which
it.
is what that's
Think
part of
about
rhetorical
how
question
you
is that
feel.
you don't, it's not to be answered.
But you always have to be prepared when you put a question
Yeah.
that somebody is going to, and there may be somebody like me who's trying to be a smart ass in the front of the room.
Well, that's a risk, if someone says something ridiculous.
But then,
That wasn't ridiculous, that was.
yeah, no, mine was. Mine was ridiculous. But then you have to figure out how to play with me, because how you treat me, and that was very early on, will set the tone. Yeah, that's funny, that is a trick play. And that might work for a play or two, right? But think about if they were in the whole game, right? It expanded.
Right, that could work, that could throw them off for a trick play. The question is how effective would that be for an entire team?
Yeah. So you have to be prepared for anything from anybody, but know however you treat people when they throw you off your game is going to be how the rest of the audience is going to view you, how you have treated them.
Right, and you know what, when you ask a question, there's almost always some wise guy or girl in the audience.
There's one in every room,
Yeah, I
at
mean,
least one.
I get it, so I can smile and say, possible? Or something like that, so I can kind of roll.
You said that's possible. What are some other possibilities,
Right,
right? So then you allow the audience, somebody else to come up with a correct
which
answer.
engages them even more, so it's pivoting and making sure, no matter what they say, they're never dismissed.
Yes,
Got it. And the fact is, what he said was on target.
yeah.
And the thing is, exactly, and do you want to maximize your ability to do that? Is that what you're looking to do? So, that's what I'm gonna talk about.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think you have too many examples because you're trying to get everybody in. So you give me the football example. Because first it's like, okay, how many of you like football? If nobody laughs and nobody claps, then, okay, how about basketball, right? Just skip that one, right?
okay. I just wanted to relate, because my concern is if I say football, I may be shutting off some of the audience that doesn't care about football. That was actually feedback.
What if I don't care about sports or film?
Right.
Well, you're just gonna have to bear with it, I guess. I don't know. I really don't know. I mean,
My comment about that intro was that maybe not so many examples, maybe have one or two and go a little bit deeper to explain to us why that's so different. I didn't know I'm not a movie person necessarily. I didn't know all the actors. You say, Ferrell, was it Ferrell?
Will Ferrell?
Will Ferrell, he normally plays that dorky guy, can never get the girl, and then, George Clooney, just go into a little more example instead of just throwing names out there, if you're gonna use that example, to take us with you.
Because some people may not be movie buffs and they don't relate.
Right, so if you don't have a football fan or a movie buff, which you may not, then you give a little more explanation, is one idea. Just do one or two, but take us with you on why that's so different. The center, they're usually big, huge guys that are really, really strong. Whereas quarterbacks, usually a little more agile and fine-tuned on passing. Give us a reason why it would be so weird for I'm a football fan, so weird for them to switch places and how ineffective that would be.
Or
Now,
take it out of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What I was going to say is because Brad had in his previous time been struggling with these analogies in the past. And I have to say, it was much better this
Awesome.
time
Oh, good.
than would have been before. And again, even further feedback to refine where we were before. But one of the first comments I wrote was much better setup on the analogies. What they're saying, I think, is probably true to set it up. I think you were going there in describing what the position was. What they're talking about is delving deeper into it for people who have absolutely no interest in basketball or football or films.
That's a good
But the
point.
progress you made on the analogy is much better than you had before, which is all we want to see here in a
Right,
speaker like.
Absolutely.
And I do have good opening, people in the wrong place, like I got the
Yeah.
point.
Right, so it gets the point across.
Yeah.
My concern about if I bring them further and explain it, would it lose its value to a lot of the people because it's such a glaring example. That was my.
Well,
But
here-
it's not a
here's,
glaring example if I don't follow football.
But would I lose the people that do follow football if I try to explain it?
If you only one sentence.
You know, we're talking about, you had 3 things that were this big, right? Take one and make it like this big. You don't need to make it crazy.
So I don't need to use 3 examples, I can just use one.
I think you use one powerful one. Another thing you may want to consider is there an opportunity to give an example that has nothing to do with sports? So, for example, imagine if the teacher drove the school bus and the school bus driver was the teacher. How do you think the day in the classroom would look? Right? Everybody's got that one. So think of something outside of those things. Because having been a woman in a male-dominated business, I got absolutely sick of sports analogies.
I get that.
Right? So maybe you did the movies to appeal to me, but think about something. So the point is people in wrong positions. Brainstorm a list of people that can switch positions that would maybe.
Or the mother and the father switched positions and the mother became the father. and
No,
father.
well, that's wrong.
That's very sexist.
yeah, it happens more often now than you think.
Yeah.
For example, my
Then you're going down a
friend,
whole other.
you want to use a universal example. If my friend was a fire captain, and he would say that he wanted people who did the hose, on the hose in that kind of situation, someone who drove the truck, could drive a truck like expertly. So in that intense situation, he said you want the right person in the right place.
What if the flight attendant had to drive the plane?
Right, and the
Yeah.
pilot became flight attendant. Okay, everyone's related to
Okay,
that. Oh, for
now,
sure.
also, let me go ahead and bring in a point and bring back a previous guest from Richard that we had with Waldo. And talking about the importance, and Lisa mentioned this earlier, the importance of knowing your audience and getting who these people are gonna be. So let's just say that you were gonna be given this particular speech to a bunch of, Georgia Tech Alumni Association or something on that line. Knowing who those people are, then in advance, you'd be able to set it up or do it on the fly. If you're giving it to a women's organization, for example, women executives, then it'd be a completely different setup on the whole thing. This is the importance of knowing who you're going to speak to,
It's really important.
even if it really surprises you when you actually get there and you are flexible enough. And I think Lisa's comment about brainstorming a bunch of different, examples on this and be able to pick them up and be able to use them on the day, I think is a good one.
Yeah.
Right, and you women executives, like female executives.
Yeah.
It's easy. What if the administrative people became the executives, and then the executives became the administrative people? How would that work out? So I could use.
Yeah.
Well, some of the administrative people feel like they run the office, so you
Yeah.
have to be careful.
So try not to be exactly in their
Right.
lane, but
Yeah.
something they are
The
familiar.
marketing
with.
people switched and became the accountants, and the accountants became the marketing. So I can come up with something that would relate.
Yeah, and then I would test those to make sure that they are strong enough, because that one doesn't give me, sales and marketing are sometimes interchangeable.
Yeah.
That doesn't give me the harsh, like, the flight attendant.
Did I say, I meant marketing,
Pilot.
accounting.
Yeah.
Marketing person became an accountant.
Right,
There you go.
so it is a hard turn from, whoa, those are really different skill sets.
Got it.
I'm sorry,
And
sir.
be careful.
Well, I actually, just as an audience member, I like the fact that you went with a total pop culture reference as
Mhm.
opposed to business and being more visceral. You might even want to use a medical term. Like imagine if you're a surgeon with a receptionist, so
Oh,
you could really
yeah.
feel like, oh my God, I want that person kind of numbing now.
The surgeon suddenly fell down and got hurt, and then they said, well, we're gonna bring in the medical system to the surgery today.
No, I would still do your switch, I would keep with your original
I'm gonna
premise.
have the receptionist, the office receptionist is available.
Well, no, what I'm saying is, your original premise was right. These two people switch places for the day. Not, he fell out and they replaced you with somebody. You're giving me a different premise. Do you see the difference?
Right.
So don't
So
change the
one
premise.
operating
The
in the
premise
wrong
works.
position.
Just make sure these two things are different.
Right. You came in, they go, we've done a reorg, and now the receptionist is the surgeon. But she read about your medical history, so she's good to go.
Again, don't give me the unnecessary detail.
Got it, okay.
Nobody
Okay.
cares about that.
Another
Lovely.
lesson from stand-up
Yes.
is, you know, you develop a quiver of comebacks to hecklers.
Yeah,
So you could have a quiver of scenarios based on what you're seeing in your audience that you develop over time.
But remember, in stand-up, I can antagonize my audience and kind of get in their face. I don't suggest you do that.
Yeah, no, I was just using
Yeah.
the quiver idea, not the antagonistic.
Okay.
The idea that you've got a, you know, you're prepared to respond based
Yeah.
on what you hear. So you realize, oh, I've got a bunch of whatever millennials out there, oh, I'm gonna pull this example out.
And if you do questions that you want answers from, but you don't want everybody saying yes and no. It's like, okay, everybody says, can everybody do this? Yeah, can you do that? Come on, do it with me. Everybody? Okay, every time I ask a question and you agree, I want you to do that. So how many people had breakfast this morning? All right, it looks like everybody's well fed. So I have conditioned them to give me answers where they don't have to say anything, but it will show me that they're engaged, they're listening, or, that everybody does the one
And then when
thing.
someone decides to answer, you can say, hold on, we agreed that.
No.
okay, I want to leave some time for Lisa. She needs to leave here at 1:30, which is on time when we
Thank you.
leave anyway. So, great feedback, good job, Brad.
Thank you, appreciate everyone's help.